Hi there. We're going to record audio overviews, which is one way a course foundation can capture ideas without writing everything out. Whether you choose to summarize one source by selecting for the one source, or you choose the synthesis, you can get NotebookLM to do an audio overview summary for you. And if you have these selected materials available, what you are going to do here is you are going to click on the pencil that is going to open up the Customize Audio Overview area. Now, there are 4 ways to customize an audio or overview. You are going to see that you can do a deep dive, a brief, a critique, or a debate. When you do this, what you are going to need to do is you are going to want to create a prompt that will demonstrate exactly how you want the audio to be produced. And in this case, you can produce a shorter audio or a longer audio. In general, the default setting is going to be the best, unless you have a compelling reason as to why you want to have a shorter or longer audio. You can also choose the language that your audio overview is going to be completed in. You can specify the audience, you can specify the tone of the host, you can specify what you want the audio to be called, and you can make any other customizations that you want. Again, this is assuming that you have chosen one of the 4 ways of customizing your audio overview. You can then click Generate. What you'll then see is that the process then begins. We're going to stop the process here, and we're going to pick it up from the completion of the generation of the audio. And our audio generation is now complete. We can now listen to our audio generation.
Welcome to another tutorial masterclass. Today, we're really digging into a highly scalable opportunity, establishing a robust second income stream through a lo-fi music YouTube channel. Now, for you, our audience of ambitious entrepreneurs and, well, astute marketers, we're providing a precise, actionable framework, our focus, resource optimization, and critically,
As you can see, you can create an audio that will synthesize all of your sources, and you'll see here that this audio is 20 minutes long in order to get all of the content out in. Once you have listened to the audio, you can then download the audio. So if you click on the ellipsis, you can then download the audio. Back in the day, we believed the course would get built in the leftover hours whenever life stopped asking. That belief always failed the same way because no pre-decided time blocks existed and nothing stayed protected from competing tasks. A routine that matched our real rhythm never got named, so the week kept deciding for us. The observable result was scattered effort, with no week-to-week progress we could point to without guessing. What we learned is that free time is not a time block, and it never stays protected. What we know now is that a product line does not come from random pockets of energy, it comes from repeatable blocks that hold. A routine that aligns with our rhythm either exists on the calendar or it does not. The morning being sharp or the night whispering ideas does not matter if the time block is not pre-decided and protected from competing tasks. The pattern we kept seeing was a week full of good intentions and a course that only got touched when everything else was done. That condition fails the steady routine test every single time because competing tasks always multiply. The truth we carry now is simple. A routine is supposed to make progress visible week to week, not make us negotiate with our own day. The end-of-year goal of stacking more than one offer cannot validate without those protected blocks holding steady. The day holding, before it even begins, only happens when the time blocks are pre-decided and treated like fixed space. The old way had us second-guessing, overthinking, and moving the work around like it was optional, which meant the blocks were not protected. The observable constraint was constant rescheduling, where coursework slid to the bottom anytime something louder showed up. That condition breaks week-to-week visibility, because nothing repeats long enough to measure. What we learned is that our rhythm cannot save us if our schedule keeps getting rewritten by other people's urgency. What we know now is that a product line needs repeatable progress, and repeatable progress needs protected blocks. A plan before we write either anchors those time blocks or it leaves them floating. Is that something must happen before writing, steps must carry us through writing, and something must come next after writing, and none of that holds without protected time blocks each week. The failure pattern shows up as starting over, because last week's work cannot be found in this week's reality, when the blocks were not held. The condition we test stays the same. Progress cannot stay visible week to week if competing tasks keep taking the same hours. What we learned is that planning without protected blocks becomes a list of wishes. What we know now is that building multiple course offers off proven problem solving only works when each week has the same committed space to move one piece forward. A solid plan guiding us, when motivation wanes, only works when the routine exists as pre-decided time blocks that do not get traded away. The old belief said motivation would carry us through rough weeks, but motivation cannot protect a calendar. The observable breakdown was predictable. A hard week arrived, the blocks disappeared first, and progress stopped being visible until we tried to remember what we meant to do. That condition fails again because competing tasks do not pause for low motivation weeks. What we learned is that steadiness is not a feeling, it is a repeated appointment with the work that stays put. What we know now is that an end of year product line requires weeks that look similar enough to produce similar output. Small wins only count when they can be tied to those same protected time blocks week after week. Completing an outline or hitting a word goal sounds concrete, but it becomes unprovable when no consistent block exists where that work reliably happens. The pattern of failure shows up as busy weeks, where nothing gets finished inside a named window, so wins feel random instead of trackable. That condition breaks visibility because progress cannot be observed consistently if the work has no consistent home on the schedule. What we learned is that small wins are not about hype, they are about evidence that the routine held against competing tasks. What we know now is that evidence matters when we want more than one offer on the shelf by year's end. A note of wins only reflects real momentum when those wins come from repeatable weekly blocks that stayed protected. The old way had us collecting scattered accomplishments across odd hours, which meant no stable pattern existed and no steady build could be counted on next week. The constraint here stays plain. If the time blocks are not pre-decided and defended from other obligations, then wins cannot stack in a predictable way. That condition fails product line building because product lines require repeatability more than inspiration. What we learned is that proven problem-solving skills do not translate into sellable assets without consistent execution windows. What we know now is that consistency shows up as protected time on a real week, not as a strong intention. Patience and care only show up in behavior when those weekly time blocks remain intact even when life gets loud. The observable failure pattern has been long gaps between work sessions where re-entry costs more than progress gives back. That falsifies steadiness because progress stops being visible across weeks when too much time passes between touches. What we learned is that faith without protected blocks turns into waiting instead of building. What we know now is that an end-of-year stack of offers depends on fewer gaps, not bigger bursts. A course growing into something strong and true depends on whether our weekly routine holds as pre-decided protected blocks all year long. The corporate-trained part of us used to treat our own work like it could be postponed indefinitely, which meant competing tasks always won, and progress stayed invisible until panic season. The condition stays unchanged here. If those blocks are fragile or routinely ignored, then our proven problem-solving never gets converted into a real line of products sitting there complete. What we learned is that translation of skill into business output requires stable conditions more than new ideas. What we know now is that this year's validation target is simple to observe by December. Either those protected weekly blocks held and multiple offers exist, or they did not and they don't. When the week has pre-decided blocks that stay protected, the coursework has a real home. In cases where those blocks are for outlining, NotebookLM can generate an audio overview from selected materials with the tone and audience set up front. Then the file can be downloaded and kept with the project. When that same block comes around next week, the audio is already there as a stable reference point, not a fresh restart. Over time, those repeatable sessions can stack into course assets that turn proven problem solving into a product line. This is how we stop starting over. There you have it, and I will see you in another video.